bit of CSS, here's some more insight for you. Now today we're going to talk a little bit more about descendants, child selectors, and attributes or adjacent selectors. So it can get a little confusing, and I'm going to share with you on the examples how to really do this. There's only a couple of these things that I really look at and the way that I work within the code. So I'll show you what I do and also some other things to pay attention to as maybe your code gets a little more complex. So let's look on screen with some examples. All right, so here's what I've done is I've basically set up a few paragraph tags and a div tag right there that's highlighting a few paragraphs within that div. And then you have a few paragraphs outside of that and obviously a few more paragraphs out there. Now, normally what you would do is if you're looking to, let's say, target some of these paragraphs, I could just go ahead and type in the P tag or paragraph tag, do a background, and we could just go ahead and do pink. And this would hit every single paragraph right there. And you can see the background gets changed to pink. Now, if you're looking to target what's inside the div, you could say, okay, well, I'll do the div, and then we'll do the paragraphs that are inside of there. And you can see those are the top three right there that gets hit or targeted. And the other ones outside of it do not get targeted because they're not inside of the div. So here's what becomes interesting though is, let's say you have this span tag because it's also targeted, but let's say you don't want that span tag to be targeted because this paragraph is a little different or unique. So what you can do is only hit the child of that, because right now it's the descendant. Otherwise, if you want to hit the span tag with the paragraph tag alone, you would do something like this. So you do div span p. If you want all of them targeted, you would go ahead and just do div p. Okay, that's the descendant. But what if you want the other two, but not anything that's different? Well, what you would do is do a greater than sign. Okay, and you can see that hits and targets those top two. Because otherwise then, the other approach to writing this is you go ahead and target it like this, and then you would have to write span background none. Okay, so that would be the other way to write it, but that's 2 lines of code, right? You don't want to do that. So it's more efficient and effective really to just go ahead and just write it like this and you're good to go. Otherwise, if you just write div space p, you get all 3. So if you just want the top 2, you go ahead and add the greater than sign. Now here's an interesting one. What if you want the paragraph tag immediately after the div? Well, what you could do is use the plus sign, which basically means the adjacent version right there. Okay, so that just hits the plus sign right there, and it allows you to go right after that. Another way to do this is, let's just say you have the UL tag right there. Okay, so we have the UL tag. So basically anything right after that, if we want the table, like the table to hit right after that, whichever the first table is, we'll go ahead and hit that, and you can see, boom, right away it gets transformed. Now, I probably wouldn't use this, but you can see how this really works and benefits you to hit the one right after that. Normally for me, I would say the one that I use most often is this greater than sign, and that one is a little bit more useful, especially when you have things within a div and then you're trying to target like certain paragraphs, and it's only those special paragraphs, because otherwise you have these spans or other creative codes around it, and you don't want those things to be targeted. So the greater than sign is very useful. Now, if you want to go ahead and select everything under, but not in the div, you could use this tilde sign, which is that squiggly thing. And this basically excludes the div. So anything that's not in the div, you can see then goes along with that. Rather than, the plus sign would give you the one right after that. But if you do the tilde sign, it kind of goes ahead and gives you everything after that. So those are kind of the selectors and how you go about selecting things. I would say the one that you'll probably use most often is just simply descendants. It's div, then p, right? And then the next one you'd probably use most frequently is simply div and then greater than sign, because that hits those exact properties. As for the other ones, I personally don't use them as much, but know and understand they are there. There's also wildcard symbol and a wildcard selector. And probably the best way to explain that is if you want to go ahead and let's just say target anything with the P tag, right? And you want the background pink, but let's just say, okay, you want every element. Okay, so let's just say you had in there also maybe this UL or bullets. You had a lot of different types of code in there. Let's just say you also had a table. Let me see if this will work. You'll throw a table in there as well, and this is inside the div. Okay, so normally if you want everything pink, right, if I do the div background pink, you can see it creates kind of a block. But what I could do is do kind of like a wildcard right here, and now it actually only hits the elements itself, right? So you can see how it's hitting all the elements in that div and creating a wildcard. That means everything, rather than if I just did the whole div, it's a whole background that's pink, that's like a block. Whereas if I go ahead and do the wildcard, it's the elements themselves within that. So I hope that makes sense. A little bit more confusing. Usually this is more used for other attributes or maybe like the body related selector or something like that. Again, I don't use it as often or frequently because it's very rare that I'm looking to make everything a certain color or everything a certain font, or everything one way. So again, usually it's for the body when you define things, but again, you do have that option to use those things. So people will usually use this for like the body for something, or simply like, the background, and they'll make it white or whatever it is. In either case, you use it less frequently, I would think, at least me personally, than the others, but know and understand that that's also there. Thanks for hanging out with me and learning. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, remember to hit the subscribe button right here, or best of all, get on my newsletter list by clicking this button right here. When you're on the newsletter list, that's where I share all the exclusive video training